G'day riders. Very recently I've had a Harley-Davidson bevel seat that I've been hanging on to reupholstered, and I recently installed that on my bike. Overall, I'm super impressed with the quality and the finish of the upholstering. You'll see here on the passenger part, the upholsterer has used a cherry coloured piece of leather to complement the dark cherry and the red of the bike. After sitting with it for a few days, I've decided that I really would prefer if this back panel was black like the rest of the seat. In a few months, Rel will likely take ownership of the Street Bob, and based on her feedback, she would prefer to have this back part of the seat black as well. So today, I'm going to attempt to recolor it black with some leather dye. To that end, I've ordered some leather penetrating dye for a company here in New Zealand called Ted's. This is an acetone based dye. The brand of the leather dye is Tarrago, and it comes in this 50ml bottle, and it also has this application brush as well. I've never recolored leather before, so this is going to be a new one on me. I have watched a couple of instructional videos, so obviously by now I'm an expert. Let's give this a try. As with anything like this, it's always an unknown quantity when someone who hasn't had a lot of experience with something tries something for the first time. So there is a bit of a gamble here as to whether this will finish well. I'm hoping, because it is a heavily concentrated dye and it is a penetrating dye, that it will soak into this leather piece, and hopefully I won't have too many problems. It's marketed as colour fast and resists friction, so if somebody is sitting on the passenger seat moving around, the hope obviously is that that colour isn't going to come off onto their pants. All I can do is trust in the manufacturer. The first thing I'm going to do, use some denatured alcohol or methylated spirits to give this part of the seat a good wipe down to remove any grease, any kind of build up, any sealants hopefully that have been used on this leather. As you can see, that is removing a coating from the leather, and the dullness of this side versus this side would suggest that it is doing some good to use this alcohol to clean the leather down. So I've let that dry off for 20 minutes or so. I don't know if you can see there, the finish is looking really lackluster, like a layer of protection has been removed. So hopefully that's enough to allow this dye to sink into the leather. And it's important to shake this bottle of dye well before use. The process with this dye is to use small rotating strokes and to work methodically up and down the piece of leather. It says that one coat may be enough, but a second coat may be needed.
Frick.
Well, there we have it, the first coat done. Coverage seems to be really good, it went on well. Where the layers of dye have overlapped, it seems to be darker. And my hope is that a second coat will help to fix that, and there's certainly plenty left in the bottle for a second coat. So I'm going to leave that for at least half an hour, and we'll come back and see what state it's in. Okay, that's been well over half an hour now, it's dry to the touch. And there's certainly no friction transfer of the colour. I can still see those overlap lines where it's a little bit darker, but what I can also see is a vague redness from the original colour, so I am going to definitely give that another coat. So that's a second coat done. In a bid to get rid of some of those darker lines, I went in the opposite direction this time but it still seems to have happened just where those lines overlap. I don't know whether it's due to it drying too quickly. It is a little bit warmer in here, but what I'm going to do is use some more of the dye just to try and randomize those marks so that it looks a bit more natural. I'm going to guess that was probably down to an excess of the dye in certain areas, but randomizing, adding something of a third coat to randomize that look does give it the look of leather grain. I'm going to allow that to dry overnight and then come back tomorrow and put some leather conditioner on it, which may help to smooth out that look, but I'm not unhappy with that at all. Alrighty, that's been about 24 hours now, and it's looking pretty good. That colour difference has stayed, which is fine. Doesn't seem to be any friction transfer. I've actually got some Harley-Davidson leather dressing, which is a petroleum-based leather balm, I guess, which will stop water and dirt kind of getting into the leather. The instructions basically apply, allow to penetrate, and then buff dry. So I've got some clean cloth. I'm going to get into that. This has really helped with those color variations as well. In fact, it's almost removed them. The color looking very even right across the seat. And there we have it, the Tarrago Leather Penetrating Dye in black. I think it's been really successful, especially for my first time using it. It definitely does need a dressing over the top. This Harley-Davidson one has been good for this seat. So overall, I'm really happy with the result.